Hey, story lovers. Welcome back to this fascinating story that will make you question destiny. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Long before the world knew his name, he was just Jules, the boy who lay in the dust, watching clouds drift while other village boys played football around him. Your head will float away one day, the elders said, leaning on their canes. But Jules only smiled. That half smile that made you wonder if he heard something you didn't. He didn't want to farm yams like his father, or run a roadside shop like his uncle, or join the army and come back with stories but no legs, like the neighbor's eldest. Jules wanted the sky, wide and clean, a place where the earth's mess couldn't touch him. While other kids folded paper planes, Jules hunted down battered flight manuals from the pastor's library. He begged the mechanic to show him how old engines worked. He watched documentaries on scratchy tapes until the pastor's son caught him one night and laughed.
What are you going to do with all these books, Jules?
Jules just shrugged.
I'll need them when I build my wings.
By 18, he was tutoring richer boys for extra coins, staying up all night to read. He earned a place at aviation school, far away. His mother prayed at dawn every day he was gone. His sister Grace, just 12 then, counted the days until he would take her up there, where no one's gossip could reach. He returned 4 years later. No big parade, just a battered bus rolling in at dusk. But when he stepped off, in that crisp white shirt with gold bars on the shoulders, the street fell silent. He looked taller, surer, like he'd tasted wind and kept some on his breath. His mother wept. His father, never one for praise, slapped his back and said nothing, but his silence was pride-shaped. Grace, 16 now, all limbs and hungry eyes, ran straight into his arms. "You did it, brother," she whispered, burying her face in his collar. Jules shook his head. "No, we did." They celebrated until the lamps ran dry. That night, the old men clapped Jules on the shoulder.
Your father planted yams, you planted wings.
His mother sprinkled salt at every doorway to keep jealousy out. At dawn, his father called him to the backyard.
My son, the pilot, come.
A blue tarp lay over something too big to hide. Jules tugged at the edge and staggered back. A plane, small, shining silver under the morning sun, single engine, seats enough for 4 souls. It wasn't brand new, but it meant the world to him. His father had sold land to buy it. Jules pressed his forehead to the cold metal, tears smudging oil and dust. A boy with wings, he thought.
Now you can start your aviation logistics business. Start by connecting the small villages around here. Then, one day, my son, you will connect to the country.
Grace bounced at his elbow. "You'll take me up first, won't you, brother?" "You promised." He laughed, wiping his face. "Of course. You, Mama, Papa, all of us." Their mother's smile faltered. The bad dream from the night before still lingered in her chest. She said a silent prayer, then forced a smile so she wouldn't spoil the moment. The day they flew, the sky was too bright, like a lie that hadn't been caught yet. Grace squeezed between their parents in the back. The propeller hummed, and Jules winked at her over his shoulder. "This is it, Gracie." From above, Amalfi spread out like a patchwork quilt. Rust-red roads snaked through green fields. Rooftops glinted like seeds. The old forest at the village's edge looked like a giant sleeping with its back turned. Grace pressed her face to the window. "It's so big." Jules chuckled, tapping the altimeter. "This is freedom. Up here, nothing can touch you." But the forest below didn't look away. It watched, listened. Then, a voice, not on the radio, but in Grace's bones. "Grace." She ripped off her headset. "Did you hear that?" Jules glanced back, confusion creasing his brow. "Hear what?" "Hey, stay strapped in, okay?" She pressed her hand to the glass. The canopy shifted, trees leaning, like old women bending to whisper. "Grace." Suddenly, the plane jerked. Hard. The engine coughed, stalled, stuttered. Jesus! Jules shouted, flipping switches with shaking hands. What is happening, my son? His father screamed. His voice cracked with terror. Their mother clutched her chest, trembling. Her voice rose into a desperate prayer. The dream, her nightmare, was coming true. Right before her eyes, a wind howled, then vanished, then howled again. But the trees below, they didn't move. They didn't move at all. Hang on, Jules cried. His voice was hoarse, his arms fighting the controls, fighting the plane, but it wouldn't listen. It wouldn't obey. Then, the screams. His sister, his mother, his father, screaming. And then, a loud explosion. Blackness. Somewhere in the dense, endless green forest, Jules and his entire family were gone. In Amalfi, the celebrations turned into vigils. The news said all had perished in a tragic crash. No bodies found, no wreckage, only the silence of a forest that refused to give up its dead. But the forest was not silent. And Grace was still alive. But what no one knew was that earlier that morning, while Jules checked his plane for its first flight with him as captain, deep in the forest, something, or should I say someone, was already waiting for Grace. Long before the plane touched the sky, before Jules grinned at the clouds or Grace pressed her face to the window, the forest was awake. Beneath the canopy, where sunlight rarely reached the floor, something ancient stirred. Wind moved without breeze. Leaves rustled without cause. The trees listened. And she, the old woman, was already walking. Her name had long been forgotten by the world. She had walked barefoot for over a century, skin like bark, eyes like fireflies. She wore time like a shawl. She moved like fog. Somewhere deep in the woods, she paused, eyes shut, breath held. She could feel them, teenagers. 6 of them, wandering too deep, laughing too loud, unaware of how close they'd come to a place that did not belong to them. She followed in silence, a shadow behind branches, her fingers twitching with knowing. She thought it might be one of them, one of the noisy, careless ones. The one, as the spirits had whispered. The next keeper. The next soul to bear the weight of the forest's ancient secrets. Her replacement. The next keeper of the forest's secrets. She drew closer, just behind a cedar tree, watching. But something felt off. The power, she could sense it. But it wasn't in any of them. It flickered. It pulsed. But it wasn't rooted in the ground. So she waited. Then suddenly, she looked up. Her breath caught, her heart, slow as a river stone for decades, stuttered. The one was in the sky, not on foot, not among the trees, but flying, in a machine of metal and wind. That's when she heard it, her name, Grace, spoken in a voice that didn't come from lips, but from essence. Spoken not from a girl to a woman, but from fate to its vessel. The new keeper had heard her name, Grace, and answered, sealing her fate. And that was all the forest needed. The trees leaned, the vines curled like fingers reaching for destiny. The sky darkened in a blink, and the old woman, keeper of secrets, opened her mouth and called. The plane faltered. The air turned thick, the engine sputtered, and with one whispered command, too old to be spoken in mortal tongue, she brought the plane down. She woke in dampness and dark, nose full of moss and mud, the smell of old roots, the hush of leaves far above. Jules! Her voice cracked in terror. Mama? No answer, just the forest, breathing, watching. She staggered upright, palms scraped, clothes torn. Panic buckled her knees. A sound ripped from her throat, halfway between a sob and a scream. She ran. Roots caught her ankles. Thorns snagged her hair. When she tripped, the earth rose to catch her, cold and soft as grave dirt. She screamed again, this time with no words, just the raw terror of a young girl alone where no one should be. Child. A shape moved, hunched, shrouded in a shawl of twined vines and rags. The old woman's skin looked like bark left out in rain for a century. Her eyes were too bright. Grace scrambled back. What are you? Where's my family?" Her voice came out raw. The old woman crouched, breath rattling like dry leaves. "They are here, in the forest, but hidden. Only the forest knows where they are. The forest holds them close, and I am the keeper of the forest." Grace's heart slammed against her ribs. "Take me to them, please." The old woman's fingers, crooked like roots, grazed Grace's shoulder. "The forest is old, and only the forest knows where they are. It does not give up its secrets freely. You must show it you are worthy." "What do you mean?" Grace felt tears of frustration form in her eyes. "I don't understand." 3 tasks, child. Carry out 3 tasks successfully, and the forest will show you what you want to know. This is the only way you can find them. Grace's mouth twisted. 3 tasks? Please, I don't have time for silly tasks. They could be hurt. Then you will never find them. The old lady turned to leave. "Wait," Grace yelled. "Please, why do I have to do 3 tasks? And how do I know I can trust you? You might be just a mad woman for all I know." The old woman didn't smile. "The forest has called you, Grace. Answer, or lose them forever." She watched the old lady walk away. "How did you know my name?" Grace whispered under her breath. Grace didn't know why, but she felt compelled to follow the old woman. Night fell fast under the trees. The old woman pressed a small object into Grace's palm, an ancient bead, warm and smooth. "Return it," she rasped, "where the roots drink deepest." Grace stumbled through the dark. She heard things moving, soft pads, the hush of feathers. She felt the forest hum under her skin. All she could think about were her parents and poor Jules, whose first solo flight outside of the academy ended in disaster. She needed to find them. She needed to comfort her big brother Jules and let him know it's all right. A great tree rose in the clearing, a trunk so wide it could swallow a house. At its base, an old hollow. She slid the bead inside. The air shifted, a hush, like the forest exhaling. Leaves shimmered, branches leaned. For one heartbeat, she felt it, a step closer. She ran back, clutching hope to her chest. That night, Grace curled into herself, trembling in the damp floor of the old woman's hut. 1 task down, 2 to go. They had to be alive, she reasoned to herself. After all, she was breathing, wasn't she? But the crash, the explosion, it haunted her, flashing behind her eyelids in fragments of fire and screams. How? How could anyone survive that? She clutched her knees tighter, forcing the spiraling thoughts out. Don't think, don't break. The old woman's voice echoed in her mind, low and rustling. The forest will show you when it is time. Grace wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Please, she prayed, let me find them. The next day at dusk, mist coiled around her ankles. Grace had been eager to complete task 2, but the old woman made her wait. Later, as the sun began to set, the old woman had led her to a river. The river was black glass, silent but for the hush of reeds. The old woman stood behind her. Ask, she said. Grace dipped her fingers in. The cold bit like teeth. But, the old woman interrupted, be sure you want to know the answers. Grace's lips trembled as she asked the river, where is my family? The river rippled. Images flickered on its skin, the plane's belly shuddering, Jules shouting her name, her mother's mouth open in a silent cry, her father with a look of fear on his face as she had never seen before. The images flickered fast, the forest below gaping wide, and then silence. She stumbled back, breath ragged. "They're dead! You lied!" Grace screamed. The old woman's eyes glimmered. "I did not lie, Grace. I told you what you needed to hear to complete the tasks, or you would have run." Grace's cry shook the forest. "You used me. They're dead because of you. You brought the plane down. Because of this place. I saw everything." "Not everything, Grace. What the river didn't show you was why." The river pulsed, words in its ripples. No. Finish. Choose. She no longer cared. She wanted to run, return to her village and warn them about the evil old woman that crashed the plane and killed her whole family. She bolted into the trees, branches slapping her face. But the paths bent back on themselves. No matter which way she turned, the forest folded her in its mouth. At dawn, she crawled back to the old woman's hut, hollowed by grief. The old woman waited. "Finish it, child. Only then will you understand." The final clearing was a circle of stones, etched with symbols older than speech. In its center, dry wood stacked like bones. Grace struck the match with shaking hands. The fire caught, a cold, hungry blue. In its heart, shadows moved. Her grandmother at the forest's edge, a voice calling. She turned away. Her mother, ears covered, she fled. Floods followed. Crops withered. Children starved. The images of her mother and grandmother tugged at her heart. She had been named after them, Grace, and dreamed of one day passing that name on to her own daughter. She saw Jules, his last smile, his hand reaching back. She felt the truth burn through her chest. His sacrifice brought her here. "Behind her," the old woman whispered. "We are the bond. When the keeper's line breaks, the land becomes wild. You were always meant to answer." Grace turned, tears streaking ash down her cheeks. "Why me?" "Because the forest heard your name before you were born, and your brother gave you to it, not to take you, but to save everyone else." Grace stood trembling, the blue flames fading to embers. The shadows they had shown her, her grandmother running from the forest's voice, her mother turning her back on the call, still burned behind her eyes. She faced the old woman who was crouched by the stones, her shoulders hunched under a shawl of vines. "You tricked me," Grace said. Her voice cracked but did not break. "You lied. You used me." The old woman lifted her face, not hard now, but paper thin, soft, ancient. Her eyes shimmered like dusk on water. "I did," she whispered. "Because if I had told you everything, who you truly are, your destiny, you would have run. You're young. You should be home with your mother, but the forest does not care for should-bes. The earth only knows balance." Grace's fists clenched. "Why me? Why my family? Why this place?" The old woman's voice softened, yet carried weight. "Because, my dear, you are my replacement. You, Grace, are the new keeper of the forest and its secrets. My time is ending. Yours is just beginning." The old woman's breath rattled. She lifted one gnarled hand, pointing at the ring of stones. "Look again, child. When the keeper's line breaks, the land is wounded. And when the land is wounded, it does not bleed. It purges." The old lady's eye beamed brighter. "What I am trying to say," she continued, "is that if I die before a new keeper is in place, the land will see atrocities of biblical proportions." Grace's eyes widened in fear. The embers flared, just enough to show flickers of storms swallowing villages whole, rivers drowning farmland, trees burning so hot they turned entire hills to ash. "There have been 3 times before when there was no keeper," the old woman rasped. floods that washed entire tribes into the ocean, fires that scorched yam fields to dust, droughts that cracked the earth open like a skull. Millions died. Millions. She touched the dirt, trembling. I am 160 years old, Grace. I was never meant to live this long. The burden should have passed. First to your grandmother. She refused. Then your mother. She refused too. I waited, and the forest grew restless. Grace closed her eyes, her chest hitching with each shallow breath. So you made the forest take my family? Tears slipped from the old woman's eyes. No, the forest called. Your brother, that brave dreamer, flew you into its arms. His spirit knew. He gave you to the earth because he could not hold it back alone. Grace knelt by the old woman's side. What happens if I run? If I walk away? If I do not choose this type of existence? The old woman's fingers curled around Grace's wrist, cold but strong with final truth. Then the forest will purge again. Storms worse than any story you've heard. Floods that swallow cities. Famine so deep bones will be picked clean by wild dogs. Fires that crack the skies open, and it will not be quick or kind. Grace felt the weight of it, her family's faces, and behind them thousands more. Mothers with empty arms, brothers who would never come home, children who would stand in fields of bones. I'm just 16, she whispered, tears brimming. How can I hold this? The old woman's thumb brushed her knuckles. Because you are stronger than you know. Stronger than any keeper before you. You are the bond between what lives and what takes. You keep the secrets, not for the forest's sake, but for theirs. She pointed into the darkness, where the hush of wind sounded almost like voices. For every village, every family, every dreamer who looks up at the sky and does not fear the ground. The old woman coughed. So, my child, your third and final task is to choose. Grace looked through the canopy, dawn light threading through the branches. She saw her brother's grin, the boy who stared at clouds while others chased dust. She heard him, not the last time in the plain, but the first time he lifted her to see a single kite spin above the yam fields. Gracie, you don't have to touch the sky to be free. Sometimes you hold the world up by staying. She pressed her hand to her chest, her heartbeat echoing in the hush. She felt the forest breathe back. The old woman sagged, her shoulders drooping like an ancient branch bowing to the weight of time. I am so tired, she whispered, voice brittle as dry leaves. I was never meant to carry this alone, not for this long. Grace instinctively reached for her hands, weathered and worn. And when it's my time, she asked softly, how will I know who comes next? The old woman's cracked lips curled into the faintest smile. You will feel her when she enters the world. The forest will hum in your bones. The wind will shift, just like it did with your brother. And when her time comes, it will carry her here. Grace's heart felt impossibly full, heavy with grief, awe, and the ache of destiny. She gazed into the old woman's eyes, the light inside them flickering like a candle in its final moments. You know, old lady, Grace murmured, her voice trembling. You never told me your name. The old woman's breath hitched with a fading laugh. My name is Grace. The words fell like a bell toll, clear, simple, inevitable. Grace's face froze, lips parted in stunned silence as the truth settled deep in her chest. Beneath the old woman's hands, the earth began to stir. Roots curled upward, gentle as fingers, cradling her in a cocoon of moss and soil and memory. Grace clutched her hands until they grew still, then let them go. By full dawn, the clearing had fallen silent. The old woman's bones now rested beneath a soft, living quilt of moss. At the center of the stones, a single sapling rose, fragile but certain. Grace sat cross-legged beside it, her palms pressed gently to the earth. Somewhere in the trees, a branch snapped, not in warning, but in welcome. A wind whispered through the canopy, stirring the ashes, threading through her hair like fingers of memory. She heard it, not a command, but a promise. Grace lifted her face to the sky, wide and endless, the same sky where her brother once dreamed. Suddenly her body began to hum, not with fear, but with power. Her breath caught as a warmth spread from the earth, curling up through her spine. Her eyes fluttered shut, glowing softly beneath their lids. Her skin shimmered faintly as if kissed by dew and sunlight. Her hair blossomed outward, thickening and rising into a glorious mane of bright white curls, wild, soft, and magnificent, like a crown spun from starlight and storms. She gasped, overwhelmed, not in pain, but in becoming. And with her transformation, the forest answered. Trees bowed. Sunlight broke through, flooding the once dim glade. Vines unfurled in waves. Flowers bloomed wild and radiant, as if rejoicing. Birdsong erupted, jubilant, alive. The wind wrapped around her like an old friend. A single tear traced her cheek. She whispered into the wind. Yes. Hey, story lovers. So if you made it to the end, I thank you so much. And since you made it to the end, tell me what you think. Sometimes a person's destiny can exist for the sole purpose of ensuring others reach theirs. Look at Jules, bright future ahead of him, and in a blink of an eye it was all over. But Grace was able to fulfill her path. If you believe in destiny, how was that fair? So until my next story, bye for now.